Shaq is forcing me. He wants me to try it. All right, so let's go into the next chapter of our people skills training. I want to talk about just the tone changing when you see something that, when you see one of these policies. I had an appointment yesterday, and the client had, she had a Northwest Mutual policy. So when you're on the field a lot, you see a pattern with certain companies. They gave her an increasing term, right? So she had $1.6 million of coverage, but the premium today was only $70, right? And at some point, it will get a lot more expensive. So when I see increasing term, I'm not happy about it because it kind of ropes people in with a very low premium. They get a high amount of coverage, and then it messes up their thinking in terms of how much real coverage costs. But what we know about Northwest Mutual is that, number one, they usually sell a whole life with it. So they say, oh yeah, we'll give you all the coverage on term, but they always figure out a way to make their commission by adding a whole life. So her whole life, now think about this. She had $1.6 million for $70. Then she had $100,000 for $135. Then, just like Sheila, we tell them that we tell our clients what they do. They sent her, she's had the policy for maybe 4 years. They sent her a letter saying, hey, we just looked at your plan, and you can actually convert your term to a whole life. They don't want to sell term. They want everything to be whole. Eventually, when you start seeing the premium is going up, they're going to want to convert you. So I just kind of I wasn't using as good tonality as I should have been, and I got a little animated, and I was like, think about that. You have $1.6 million for 70 and 100 for 135. How does that make any sense? And she's like, yeah, that was really dumb of me. And I was like, no. I didn't mean it to you. I'm saying this is what they're doing to people, right? They don't like the commission on $70, even though they could have sold them a regular term, which they never do. So what they do is they add this in. That way they can just bump up the premium and they can make a lot of money, which is just nuts that they do this. And then they told her that, don't worry, the whole life, when the cash value will eventually pay for the rising premium, which we know that's a lie because they're two separate entities. You can't take the cash value from one and pay the term. So just lies upon lies, very easy replacement. Just so you know, this is what I drew for her. I said, look, my policy is going to cost more right now, but it's going to save you all this in the future. Okay, so I said it'll be a little painful paying more right now, but if we just take this and we cancel that and you add it to whatever, right, and that's how I got the sale. So very, very easy, but these guys are out there always doing the wrong thing. So let's go into this. I'm going to read a couple pages from this. I've been getting good feedback from you guys. So let's go ahead and start. Go to Charisma. All right, so the charisma principle. A lot of times we think, or I thought, that having charisma meant, they call it Riz, like you're just saying the right things when you're talking to women, you're kind of like making them laugh, and you're always just saying the perfect thing, you're coming across as cool. What this book is saying is that that's actually not what real charisma is. That is not what people really like. And that was comforting to me, because I'm not like that, right? What it says here is you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. So that's what you got to ask yourself. Are you the type of person you're trying to get people interested in you, or are you genuinely interested in other people? Now, can you garner a lot of followers on social media? Can you have a lot of acquaintances if you're an interesting person? Absolutely. But to have real depth and longevity in friendships and relationships, this is the type of connection people are looking for, where we have an interest in them. And actually, the next couple slides are going to say this over and over again. Do I focus on others and their interests or my own? I want to hear about your interests. I'm not going to make an assumption that you want to hear about my interests. That's usually how I communicate. If you want to, it's repetitive, right? If you want to connect with others, focus on them, not on yourself. So When you are recruiting someone, we got to focus on them. What do they want? What are their goals and dreams? What are they trying to accomplish? And then, of course, with clients, that's obvious. We're not here talking about ourselves. All right. So how can we have charisma with people? Number one, become genuinely interested in other people. One of the things that the book says is when you walk into a room or you go to a party or you go to a gathering, it's all about the hellos and the goodbyes. And by the way, I'm terrible at this. I'm the guy that leaves and I didn't even say goodbye to anyone. I hate saying goodbye, right? But it makes people feel special. Oh man, you're here, what's going on, dude? And then when I leave, all right, it was great seeing you today, whatever. It's in the hellos and goodbyes. That's what the book is saying. So we can all learn from that. Next, smile. The thing about a smile that they're saying is that a smile is inviting. You want to make a habit of smiling. This was a habit for me. My friend's like, it's a woman obviously, and she said, don't smile so much, you're going to get wrinkles, right? But what are you going to do? That's how some people think. But a smile is inviting. And so they talked about an experiment that someone did, and he said, this guy worked in a booth, and he always made it a point to smile at everyone. Most of the people walked down the aisles with their eyes focused on the various products each vendor had to offer, but Charlie says an interesting thing often happened. Many people walked down the aisle, but at last second, when they were almost past the booth, they would look up at him for a moment. More than half of those people saw his smile and made a sudden U-turn and came back to look at his products in the booth. And he said, if they looked up and I just made eye contact, it wouldn't make a difference. But when I smiled, they would come back because a smile is inviting, right? You got to smile when you're prospecting. You got to smile when you meet someone for the first time and you do these Zoom interviews. Of course, on a Zoom, it matters a lot. I know you're focused and you want to get a sale and you want to explain the technicalities of the policies and all that. But dude, you got to bring the wall down. You got to ease the tension. You got to ease the person. And that happens when you smile. One of the weird things that I do, because I read this one time and I do it all the time, if I'm not feeling great about something, I will smile when there's nothing to smile about, like to myself. And what the brain does when you smile is automatically you get flooded with whatever, right? You just kind of feel good. So it's like you don't feel good, but then you're like, let me just smile right now, right? And then you kind of feel good. So it helps in that way as well. Remembering other people's names. So again, another thing that I'm terrible at, but I got to get better. And I've known this forever, and all the books say this. But you know, when people use your name, like the title of this is, remember that a person's name is to him or her the sweetest and the most important sound. So some people are really good at this. When they're presenting to you or they're talking to you, they just keep saying your name, and I don't know what it is, you know they're doing it, but it just works. And Shelly Narain does that. When she's in a sale, she'll ask the person obviously their names, but then she'll be like, what are your kids' names? And then she's constantly using the kids' names in the presentation. Oh, you know, John and Jane, if something were to happen to you, we would make sure this and that, and we want to help John and Jane go to college, and you're using the name, and people love to hear it. Talk in terms of the other person's interests, okay? It's all about learning about the other person and building common ground. That was one thing I learned from Hector Lamarck. I've gotten to be, I wasn't always like this, I've gotten to be very good at building common ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of like pepper you with questions, not in a weird way, but just kind of ask some things about you. Oh, where do you work? Where'd you go to high school? Did you play any sports? Do you have siblings? What do your parents do? What country are you guys from? Just like really quickly, and I'm just gathering data. And then I'm thinking, all right, these are the things that I know these are some talking points that I can expand on in terms of where they're from or what their interests are. And a lot of times what happens is when you tell me, hey, I used to work at, like, what's an example of someone who works in here, a job? Okay? You work at the casino. So now he's telling me what it's like to work at the casino. Next time I go and I talk to someone who works at a casino, I have 2 stories that he told me.
Yep.
That's an automatic conversation starter, right? Or you work in IT. We have 1 million stories for that. Or you're a teacher, or you're a coach. So when someone does something that's interesting, I want to know, what do you do? Because I'm interested in that person, but also I'm going to use that for the next person to build that common ground. Right? Yesterday I met with someone, and I met with two people. They both work for the same company. So the guy comes in the afternoon, he's doing a rollover with me, and he's like, yeah, I work with ServiceNow. And I already knew that. That's a huge company that's right over there, one of the biggest software companies in the world. Amazing company. Like, they're balling. And so I said, oh, you guys just had that conference, right? And he said, yeah, we just had the ServiceNow conference. We rented 2 whole casinos, every single club, every single restaurant in Vegas, and we had Pitbull do a private concert for us. I was like, oh, that's amazing. Then later on, I go to my mom's house. Now, this was not a client, and she had a guest over, husband and wife, and he's like, oh yeah, I work for ServiceNow. And I was like, oh, you guys just had Pitbull, this, that, and then it's just an instant conversation starter. And the first client told me, yeah, our company spent $100 million on this event. So I told him, I heard you guys spent $100 million. And he was like, yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
This is how I do it. But the thing is it's not a tactic. You actually have to be interested, because I have friends that are very sharp and they watch me do it and they're just like, dude, I don't know how you do that. Because they just don't care. They don't want to talk to people.
Right.
They're not that interested.
Right.
I really am. And now I've noticed, like, when they have to meet someone new, me of all people is the one they want to bring. Because I'm the one who doesn't talk, but at least in an interaction like that, I can pull some information out of people.
Yeah.
And now these guys are bringing me in business meetings, and when they meet people the first time or they're acquiring companies, it's so weird. They want me there to talk to that person. I'm telling you, these are amazing people skills that you guys can develop.
Right.
The confrontation principle. So this one is kind of changing gears, and this is really, really important for our business. Primerica is a weird animal because we're not going to fire you. Unless you do something really, really egregious, we have to try our best to get along, because we're probably both going to be here for a long time. And I benefit off you guys doing better. I don't want to let you go. Even if you're underperforming right now, you can start overperforming sometime in the future, right? So confrontation is very, very important. Confrontation is unavoidable. I was talking to Bruce the other day about something, and I was like, yeah, I don't want there to be friction. And it wasn't even a millisecond. He goes, there's always friction. I was like, oh. Confrontation is unavoidable, man. It's all about how you handle it, which is one of the other points he's saying, right? Confrontation is difficult. And a lot of people are averse to confrontation. That's okay. Because what you're averse to is the negative type of confrontation. When I was younger and I was in Primerica, I used to look forward to confrontation, and it would always be negative. And I thought that was that made me feel strong somehow. It was dumb.
Yeah.
And that is not, and I lost a lot of friendships and recruits, and I pushed a lot of people away because I didn't know how to deal with conflict. And I've talked to you guys about this before, right? But how we handle conflict determines our success in tough situations. We're all going to be in very tough situations with people, with clients. How we handle that is going to determine our success. Conflict is like cancer. Early detection increases the possibility of a healthy outcome. All right, so let's look at why is confrontation difficult? Why is it difficult to confront? Because we fear being disliked, misunderstood, or rejected. We fear the unknown. Right? So what are the different things that people do that are wrong in conflict? They have a win at all costs mentality. So it's like a shootout. It's quick, it's brutal, it's destructive. So you get into a conflict and you're yelling and you're cursing and you're putting the other person down. Obviously that is not a good way to do things. Pretend it doesn't exist. A lot of people do this. If you hear no evil, you see no evil, speak no evil, evil will not cease to exist, which is not true. Whine about it. Winners are not whiners, and whiners are not winners. Playing the victim doesn't cure conflict. It just irritates everybody.
Right.
Keeping score. People who keep a record of wrongs can't ever start over fresh. And nobody can ever get even. Pulling rank. Using position never really resolves conflict. It merely postpones it. Well, I'm your dad's, and I said so, right? Or I'm this, or I'm that, right? And people in Primerica sometimes do that. They act like a boss. It doesn't work like that here. This is a volunteer army. White flagging. Quitting is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So they just kind of like let the relationship go. All right, so what are the healthy ways to have a confrontation? Confront a person only if you care about them, right? So when you care about the person and you go into a confrontation, you have to tell yourself that you want to make this a win-win situation. That's how you go into it. If you don't care, what's the point in confronting, right? But you have to have a mindset that it's going to be a win-win. Meet together as soon as possible. When conflict arises, we are tempted to avoid it, procrastinate dealing with it, or ask someone else to resolve it for us. But the truth is that anytime you let conflict go, for whatever reason, it only gets worse. If people are put in a position to start speculating about another person's motives or to figure out what might have really happened, they often think the worst. And it makes a situation fester. Okay? So before things get worse, you got to sit down, you got to meet with the person. Now, he says that you have to first seek understanding, not necessarily agreement. I think this is big. You can't just go in and say, look, man, this is what I need you to do because you're acting like this and I noticed this or whatever. No, you have to first seek understanding, okay? Hey, outline the issue. Describe your perceptions. In the beginning, stay away from conclusions or statements about the other person's motives. Just tell them what you think you see and describe the problem you think that it's causing. Look, man, this is what I've noticed, okay? Let me just tell you, this is what I've noticed. You're doing this in front of people, other people are hearing, right? And I think that, this is the issue that's causing. And then tell how this makes you feel. If the other person's actions make you angry or frustrated or sad, express it clearly and without accusation. So again, I don't know why this is happening or why you're doing this, but this is how it's making me feel about the situation. Explain why it is important to you. Many times when a person finds out that something is a priority to you, that is enough to make him or her want to change. Encourage a response. That's next. So obviously, if you're going to have a confrontation, you have to listen. One of the best ways to persuade others is with your ears, by listening to them. So in a confrontation, if you can settle down and you can just listen to the other person, you realize that the situation starts to de-escalate. It's very rare that two people are letting other people talk one at a time and they're getting louder and angrier. Right? That happens when you're not letting someone finish and when you're talking over each other and you're not listening to the other person. So encourage a response. This is important, and I talked about this the other day. Sometimes simply having the discussion helps you to realize that your perceptions were wrong. And sometimes you realize you're the problem. Well, actually, that's happening because every time when you come in, you do this, and then you start to realize, oh, you're right, that is what I'm doing, and I gotta stop. All this takes a lot of personal growth and a lot of maturity because when you're immature and you don't have the emotional intelligence and you don't understand these things, obviously we're 0 to 60, right? What you'll realize from dealing with a lot of people and reading these books and hearing these different things and seeing us leaders exemplify this in our own personal reactions with you and situations with you, then you'll get better over time, okay? So, great meeting today, guys. Watch that video with Tia. Sheila, great job. We got, a couple weeks left in the month. We have this big event. Let's not drop the ball. We have the convention. So many amazing things going on. Make sure you put in work after this and set your appointments. Team on 3. 1, 2, 3.